He stepped back, watching the officer go to work. As the younger man typed rapidly, Zarrin allowed himself a brief, satisfied smile. Earth wasn't merely reacting to the Hegemony's orders. It was setting the stage for a much grander plan, one they could not predict. Hessek was standing before a massive laser plasma display in the control center, the room aglow with the eerie light from the interface. The transmission was incoming, its lines of code dissecting every movement in the galaxy. The Galactic Council's extinction order for Earth blinked onto the screen, cold and impersonal. It was just one more message to add to their long list of threats. But this time, something was different. "Earth's response?" an officer asked, unable to hide the edge of uncertainty in his voice. "Prepare it," Hessek replied, his gaze never leaving the screen. Short, to the point. The officer hesitated for a moment before entering the command. A single line of text flashed up on the screen. "Request denied." Hessek allowed himself the faintest smirk. That was it. The hegemony was used to humanity shrinking before their superiority. They would soon learn that the Earth they thought they knew was already gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. A species that had learned the art of patience, of subtlety. Earth had spent years quietly preparing for this moment, laying the foundation for a war that was not just military, but intellectual. "We have work to do," Hessek said, turning to face his officers. "The hegemony won't know what hit them." Elsewhere in the galaxy, deep within the heart of the hegemony's empire, the response from Earth was received with expected surprise. Saren Valtrix, the leader of the Galactic Council, stood before a massive holographic display. The message he had anticipated, a call for submission, for surrender, had not arrived. Instead, Earth had sent a single line of text, blunt in its defiance. "Request denied." Valtrix clenched his mandibles in frustration. "Prepare for immediate action. We will not let this insult stand." He motioned for his officers to begin preparations for the extermination of Earth. But in the back of his mind, doubt began to creep in. This was no longer just an execution. It was a challenge he had not expected from what he thought were mere primitives. Back on Earth, the battle had already begun, not with weapons or bloodshed, but with systems and signals. Darian Hessek knew this was just the first stage. The Galactic Council would throw everything at Earth, but they would find themselves fighting more than just a war. They would fight a revolution in technology, in politics, and in how the galaxy viewed itself. As Hessek stood alone in the control room, a single thought echoed through his mind, heavy with purpose. The hegemony would soon learn the hard way that the true power of humanity lay not in weapons, but in its ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast. "Enemy vessels on approach," the comms officer's voice echoed in the dimly lit control room. A flurry of activity ensued as the crew rushed to their stations, every hand moving with practiced efficiency. Darian Hessek's eyes fixed on the laser plasma display as the hegemony's fleet emerged on the edge of Earth's orbit, their imposing silhouette casting a shadow over the planet. It was the first strike, and Earth had prepared for it with a calm, calculated strategy. "Activate Phase 2, Hessek commanded, his voice steady, unwavering. The moment Earth's fleet engaged, the battle was not fought with weapons alone. Instead, Varric Rordan, commander of Earth's battle tactics, orchestrated a psychological assault so subtle, it slipped beneath the radar of the hegemony's advanced intelligence. From his command ship, the Zephyr Command, Rordan watched as the first wave of holographic images unfolded on the vast space display. Earth's cities, under attack, firestorms tearing through buildings, mass destruction, the sort of devastation that would have had any less prepared species scrambling for survival. But the holograms were a lie, images designed to deceive. To the Hegemony, the terror was real, the scenes playing across their communication systems so vivid that they were compelled to engage immediately, launching their fleet with more force than necessary, heading straight into what they thought was Earth's final hours. They never noticed that Earth's resistance wasn't crumbling, it was merely waiting. In the background, Rordan Helix, Earth's chief cyber strategist, sat hunched over his console, fingers dancing over keys with fluid precision. He initiated the next stage, hacking into the Hegemony's communication lines. At first, it was barely perceptible, a slight distortion in their incoming signals, followed by an explosion of false distress calls. The holographic images, combined with fabricated emergency broadcasts, led the Hegemony's fleet commanders straight into false hotspots, areas of no strategic importance where human forces lay hidden, waiting for the right moment. The Hegemony's forces, fooled by this mockery of Earth's defeat, spread thin, and Earth's plan was already in motion. The first phase was a trap. Meanwhile, Bren Zarrin paced in front of his small fleet, staring into the depths of space, where the edge of Earth's moon was just beginning to emerge from the inky blackness. He knew the odds. He knew his force was outnumbered, outgunned. But none of that mattered. It wasn't about numbers, it was about how they fought. The Hegemony's expectations were based on old paradigms, ones that Earth had already shattered in silence. "Prepare the shields and reroute all power to auxiliary weapons," Bren muttered, his voice sharp but steady. The order was simple, the plan was clear. They would hit fast, hard, and above all, unpredictably. He watched as the moon's surface slowly came into view through the viewport, his next battleground. His fleet, cloaked under the guise of civilian transports, was poised to strike. The first missile launched, but not with the expected trajectory. Instead, it was a decoy, an optical illusion to confuse the Hegemony's tracking systems. As they recalibrated, Earth's forces moved in, unleashing a salvo of missiles that disrupted the Hegemony's fleet formation. The battle over Earth's moon erupted in a burst of color and destruction. Missiles streaking across the sky, ships dodging and weaving through flak bursts. A massive explosion rocked the Hegemony's lead ship, a flagship that was now vulnerable. Earth's guerrilla tactics, coupled with unexpected weapons, left the superior Hegemony fleet reeling. "Strategic command is in disarray, sir," a voice crackled over the comms, barely audible through the static. Rordan stood silently, his hands still on the control panel as he watched the Hegemony's forces scramble to reorganize. The enemy's tactics were stilted, predictable. Everything they had done so far played into Earth's hands. Every move was met with deception. Every victory felt hollow, like a game of chess where the pieces were never where they seemed to be. Meanwhile, back in the command center, Rordan Helix had already infiltrated the heart of the Hegemony's systems. Using Earth's own technology, he had corrupted their command matrix, seizing control of their key communications networks. The Hegemony's fleet, now battling over a futile moon engagement, received false orders, directing them to engage the wrong coordinates, distracting them even further. Disabling primary communication channels. "Now," Rordan muttered to himself, watching as the Hegemony's entire strategy collapsed in real time. He could feel the pulse of the battle. Slowly but surely, Earth was winning, not with force, but with deception, misdirection, and technical precision. The Hegemony's ships were now blindly attacking their own forces, confused by the manipulated orders. The immediate result of Earth's careful subterfuge became apparent as the Hegemony's fleet began to fall into disarray. What should have been a decisive, crushing strike against the human resistance had instead turned into chaos. Commanders issuing conflicting orders, forces misaligned, ships scattered in pursuit of false objectives. Even their most advanced ships were no match for the invisible hand of Earth's attack. What was even more terrifying for the Hegemony was that they couldn't even tell if Earth's fleet had ever truly mobilized at all. "Report," Hessek's voice was quiet, but with the weight of someone who had anticipated this outcome. "It's working," Rordan replied. "They don't know where to strike next. Their fleet is scattering across false targets. It's confusion on a scale they've never experienced." Earth had won the first psychological battle, but Hessek's mind wasn't satisfied. The next strike had to be something more tangible. The unseen war was well underway. While the Hegemony fought in space, Earth's most subtle weapon was its bureaucratic war. In the halls of the Galactic Council, Corwin Halvrin and his team worked furiously, slipping into the data streams unnoticed. They flooded the Council's system with legal documentation and requests that, on the surface, appeared innocent, but were laced with contradictions and requests for answers the Hegemony simply couldn't provide. Every document they filed was a trap, a series of legal requests that forced Hegemony officials into endless meetings, wasting their time. The Council was stuck in a labyrinth of paperwork, and they had no idea who had constructed it. With every attempt to make a decision, they were presented with contradictory documentation, each one twisted to ensure they were wasting time, slowing their response time to Earth's growing insurgency. "Just one more form and we're done with this," Corwin whispered, watching as his screen updated with yet another complication added to the Council's vast bureaucracy. It was an ironic battle, but one that would slowly, quietly paralyze the Hegemony. By the time the Hegemony realized it had been tricked, the damage had already been done. Earth's counterattack wasn't just military, it was a new kind of warfare, one that combined old-fashioned tactics with modern deception and technological mastery. The result? A force that didn't need to overwhelm, it just needed to outthink. The Hegemony, floundering in confusion, found itself in a position it hadn't expected, unable to respond effectively, unable to control its own forces, and now faced with a galaxy that was beginning to question whether the Council had the authority it once claimed. Earth's power wasn't just in its weapons, it was in its ability to undermine, to manipulate, and to strike where its enemies never thought to look. "We're in position," Jarek Dross muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, even though the whole room was alive with activity. His fingers hovered over the console, waiting for the green light. In the quiet of the war room, every second felt like a lifetime. "Engage!" Darian Hessek's command cut through the tension, a simple word that set in motion the first stage of humanity's true retaliation. With a single press, Earth's advanced fleet was launched, and the space above the Hegemony's most secure military bases shifted in a heartbeat. The tension on the bridge of the Oberon was almost suffocating, but it didn't stop Jarek from watching the incoming data stream with focused intensity. Beneath him, unseen to the enemy, Earth's latest technological marvels were slipping into the vast expanse of Hegemony space. These new vessels, sleek and silent, were barely a whisper against the black backdrop of space. They were ghosts, shadows in the dark, unseen, undetected. Kadrin Torvok, overseeing the final stages of Earth's new technological developments, couldn't help but feel the pulse of anticipation surge through him as the stealth ships slipped past enemy patrols. The Hegemony had thought their military was unbeatable, but that had been before Earth's scientists had poured every ounce of ingenuity into turning that belief upside down. Now, a fleet of quantum shatterers was heading straight toward the heart of Hegemony space, vessels so advanced, so alien in their design, that they left even the most experienced commanders of Earth in awe. They didn't need to engage in combat. Their presence alone was enough to shake the Hegemony to its core. Kadrin Torvok stood at the center of his lab, the cold glow of his screens reflecting off his glasses. "I've always preferred to surprise our enemies," he muttered to himself, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. His hands moved over the holographic display, manipulating the coordinates of the quantum shatterers with surgical accuracy. They were unlike anything the Hegemony had seen, nearly invisible, equipped with weapons capable of tearing through their defenses as though they were paper. On his orders, the first strike was launched. Earth stealth ships activated cloaking systems, bypassing the most advanced security in the galaxy. As they neared their targets, they deployed the new weapons, a network of quantum shields that scrambled the Hegemony's electromagnetic fields. For the first time, the Hegemony's weapons couldn't lock on. Their systems flared with confusion and error as the shields absorbed every attack sent their way. The Nethar, a flagship of the Hegemony, had just made the fatal mistake of pursuing a vessel that it could not track. Within moments, its communications array was rendered useless, its weapon systems offline. Panic rippled through the Hegemony fleet as the once untouchable leaders of their military stumbled, struggling to regain control. But Earth's response was not just about brute force. It was about control, about taking the wheel of this galactic struggle. And with every strike, Earth sent a clear message. No one was beyond reach. While the Hegemony was grappling with their sudden technological failure, Rordan Helix was hard at work behind the scenes. Every system in the enemy's arsenal, from their primary military comms to their most guarded databanks, had been compromised. Earth had not simply sent an army, it had infiltrated, corrupted, and dismantled the very systems the Hegemony believed to be untouchable. Rordan sat back for a moment, watching as another part of the Hegemony's infrastructure fell. Their order matrix, the backbone of their military coordination, was crumbling under the weight of Earth's digital assault. "Orders are shifting, sir," one of Rordan's subordinates said, their voice laced with awe. "The Hegemony's fleet is, well, confused. Their warships are firing on each other." Rordan smiled, satisfied but not surprised. It was all according to plan. The key wasn't just to destroy. Earth was playing a far deeper game. Earth wasn't just outsmarting the Hegemony in combat, it was eroding their authority piece by piece. Their ability to adapt was now gone. They were no longer facing Earth's resistance, they were facing their own collapse. Back in the Galactic Council's chambers, the situation was rapidly becoming untenable. The Hegemony's political control had always been ironclad, until now. Earth's growing technological dominance was no longer a whisper on the wind, it was a roar. As Corwin Halvrin and his team executed their final steps, filing unprecedented volumes of paperwork to the Galactic Council, they didn't just clog the system, they broke it. "Another legal submission," one of the assistants muttered as the screen flickered to life with a new document. But this wasn't any ordinary request for clarification or permission. This was a barrage of legally laced filings, each one building on the last, twisting the Galactic Council's policies to ensure their own downfall. As they dug through the massive flood of paperwork, the Hegemony found itself facing a paradox. Each form, each submission, wasn't just a complication, it was an argument. A piece of political and legal warfare so precise that it would take decades to fully unravel. "I've never seen such manipulation of bureaucratic procedure," Corwin said, his voice low but filled with admiration. "They're turning our own system against us." The Hegemony had always prided itself on its control of information, its mastery over intergalactic law and military might. But now, with every stroke of Earth's pen, their influence slipped further away. The Council wasn't just being attacked by weapons, it was being undermined by paperwork, by legal documents, each one turning the narrative of the war against them. No longer was the Council seen as the omnipotent force they once were. Earth's strategy was slowly but surely transforming them from a symbol of absolute authority to a crumbling relic of arrogance. At the same time, Earth's military presence was no longer limited to space battles or cyberspace. A new phase of warfare had begun, information warfare. Earth began broadcasting evidence of the Hegemony's historical genocides across the galaxy. The images were powerful: cruel invasions, mass exterminations, the complete disregard for life in the name of supremacy. These were not just military strikes, These were messages. The galaxy watched as Earth's truth shattered the hegemony's facade. Their past sins, sins that the hegemony had buried, were now exposed for all to see. And with each broadcast, their power waned, their influence crumbled. The message to the galaxy was loud and clear. Earth was not just a resistance, it was the beginning of a new era. The hegemony's time was over. As Earth's fleet surged forward, not with the overwhelming force of a typical military, but with the unrelenting momentum of a people fighting for their place in the stars, the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The hegemony's leadership was starting to crack under the pressure. They no longer had the confidence to push their agendas. Every system, every policy they had held sacred was now being dissected, analyzed, and twisted by Earth's unseen hand. Their fleets were scattered, their systems were hacked, and their political control was no longer solid. The Council had lost the moral high ground, and they could no longer maintain their status as the galaxy's ruling power. The hegemony's final hopes of holding on to their dominion were slipping away, and the true extent of Earth's power was finally coming into focus. Not just a force of military might, but a force of resilience, intellect, and bureaucracy. The galaxy was no longer divided between those who ruled and those who followed. It was now divided between the hegemony's past and Earth's future. "Engage the core systems," Darian Hessek commanded, his voice sharp but calm. The tension in the command center was nearly suffocating, but his presence grounded the team. They had prepared for this moment for years, meticulously planning every move in secret. Now, Earth's victory wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. The operation to disable the hegemony's final line of defense was set in motion. The AI network Earth had developed, a massive and encrypted system, would be their most powerful weapon. The AIs weren't just powerful, they were precise, calculating, and free from the errors of their creators. As the systems came online, the entire hegemony military command began to shift. Without warning, the enemy's best defenses faltered. Hessek watched the live feed from his command station. On the screen, the first signs of the hegemony's chaos began to unfold. Their flagship, the Vorthian, was suddenly offline. Military systems across the hegemony's fleet went silent, and their communication networks scrambled. Earth's artificial intelligence systems, designed specifically to target these flaws, were methodically overriding the hegemony's weapons control systems. Slowly but steadily, Earth was pulling their military assets under its command. "Cadron, now!" Hessek barked, his eyes still glued to the heads-up display in front of him. Cadron Torvok felt the shift immediately. From his station aboard the Black Titan, Earth's most advanced cruiser, he saw the hegemony fleet start to disintegrate. His orders were simple: target their manufacturing hubs and military installations, cripple the hegemony's ability to retaliate. The moment Earth's AI systems turned the tide in their favor, Cadron acted. Coordinating with Rordan, they launched a series of devastating strikes on the core manufacturing hubs in hegemony space. They knew that the hegemony's greatest strength lay in their production facilities, their ability to replenish and resupply. Destroy those, and the fleet would wither away. "Firing on target," Cadron said to his crew, his voice sharp as he watched the data flood his screen. "All weapons on my mark." The ships under his command unleashed a torrent of destruction, bombing key industrial complexes into oblivion. From the Zephyr Command, Rordan coordinated the assault, ensuring each strike hit its mark. It wasn't just destruction, it was surgical. With every target eliminated, Earth's military was one step closer to breaking the hegemony's ability to defend itself. "Keep them guessing," Varric muttered as he surveyed the battlefield. The strike wasn't just a show of force. It was a psychological blow that left the hegemony reeling, scrambling to adjust. They had no time to retaliate, and each passing second saw their infrastructure collapsing. Meanwhile, Jarek Dross led the charge into the Hegemony's heart, directly into their capital system. The Hegemony had believed they had regained control of their forces after Earth's earlier blows, but they were wrong. Jarek's fleet, now equipped with Earth's new ion storm weapons, appeared like a storm cloud on the radar. The ion cannons fired with pinpoint accuracy, creating a series of cascading shockwaves that disabled the Hegemony's fleet within moments. Jarek stood at the center of the bridge, his gaze unwavering as the ion storms raged across the Hegemony's defenses. "They'll never see it coming," he muttered under his breath. As he spoke, a chain of ion blasts hit their targets, disabling one Hegemony warship after another. Each strike was a well-coordinated masterpiece. There was no more hesitation, no more fear. Every strike had a purpose, and Earth's dominance became undeniable. In the chaos of the capital system, the Hegemony's military forces, now disoriented and uncoordinated, struggled to regain control. But Earth was ahead of them, always a step in front. The ion storm weapon was designed for this very moment, an unstoppable force that disrupted the enemy's communication and tracking systems, rendering their fleets defenseless. What had been an overwhelming Hegemony force just moments ago now lay scattered, blind, and vulnerable to Earth's surgical strikes. "Hold steady," Jarek ordered, his tone commanding as his fleet regrouped. The battlefield had become a chaotic whirl of explosions and disintegrating ships, but Earth's forces remained calm, precise, and deadly. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for control. The Hegemony's once indomitable force was breaking apart, and Earth's fleet was the reason. With Earth's military strikes paralyzing the Hegemony, the next phase of the operation began. Destruction was only part of the plan. Reprogramming was the true key. Earth's forces, under Hessek's careful guidance, had already begun reprogramming the remaining Hegemony warships. With their systems compromised, each warship was slowly turned into a mockery of its former self. The weapons, once powerful and terrifying, were now reprogrammed to perform a different task, showing the galaxy the cruelty of the Hegemony's past. On the Zephyr command, Varric watched the first warship fall under Earth's control. "Initiate Phase 1, he ordered. The Hegemony warship's weapon systems were overwritten, and in their place, Earth's artificial intelligence systems uploaded footage of the Hegemony's long history of genocide. What was once a vessel of destruction became a platform for propaganda, playing videos that exposed the Council's dark past, showing the galaxy just how far they had gone to maintain their dominance. Earth's message wasn't just being broadcasted through conventional channels, it was embedded within the Hegemony's own military assets. With each passing second, the Hegemony's fleet transformed from an imposing threat to an impotent symbol of their corruption. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Darian Hessek monitored the final moments of the battle. The Hegemony's military was in ruins. Their flagship lay in ruins. The political control they once held so tightly had already begun to slip. The propaganda machines had already started broadcasting Earth's message to the galaxy. The message was simple, clear, and undeniable. Earth had not just survived, it had conquered. The Hegemony, once the self-proclaimed rulers of the galaxy, were now nothing more than a shadow, their power broken by a force they had never seen coming. "Command, we've succeeded," Varric's voice crackled through the calm. His tone was one of quiet satisfaction, not jubilation. They had won, but it wasn't about the victory. It was about the message they had sent. "Then let's make sure it's heard," Hessek responded, his voice steady. "The galaxy needs to know that the Hegemony's time is over, and Earth will lead it into a new era." The final battle was over. The Hegemony's fleets were crushed, their political power nullified, and their military destroyed. Earth stood victorious, not just as a survivor, but as the new power in the galaxy. The old order had been dismantled, piece by piece, and now a new order was emerging, one where Earth would no longer be a mere pawn, but a force to be reckoned with. Not one step back, Darian Hessek's voice was quiet, but it resonated across the galactic bridge like a ringing bell. The finality of his words didn't need to be emphasized. Earth's victory was a declaration, a change of tides that would reshape everything. The hegemony had fallen, but the real battle was just beginning. The battle for what came after. The galactic map in front of Hessek gleamed like a constellation, showing the once vibrant, corrupt systems of the hegemony, now subdued, darkened by the weight of their own broken promises. No longer would they dictate the fate of countless species. Instead, it was Earth's turn to lead, not by force, but through the foundation of a new order. A system built on transparency, equality, and the recognition of life's inherent value. "You've done well, Darian," Rordan Helix said from his station, his voice even, despite the weight of the moment. "But the work is far from over." Hessek turned to face him, meeting his gaze. "It's only just begun, Rordan. The galaxy needs more than just a shift in leadership. It needs a new beginning." Corwin Halvrin, who had been tirelessly drafting Earth's diplomatic strategy, stood before the holographic display of the new Galactic Council, a body that now represented the collective will of countless species, all working under Earth's guiding principle of egalitarian governance. The hegemony's former bureaucratic machinery had been repurposed, turned from an instrument of oppression to one of collective responsibility. The new system was clean, efficient, and filled with purpose. "We must proceed carefully," Corwin said, his tone firm but tempered with years of diplomatic training. "The foundation of this new order depends on every word we speak, every decision we make." He stood before a council made up of the very species that had once been subjugated. They no longer feared the hegemony. Instead, they feared the uncertainty of a system that had always been dictated by others. Earth's first major act was not war. It was an invitation to rebuild, to allow every species to have a voice in the decision-making process. For too long, the galaxy had been a battlefield of suppression. It was time to focus on healing the wounds of history. "The past doesn't die easily," Corwin said, turning to face his colleagues. "But if we are to succeed, we must do more than acknowledge our shared pain. We must learn from it." The new government, based on the ideals of transparency and mutual respect, began to take root under Earth's guidance. Kadrin Torvok and Varric Ordan, the architects of Earth's military victory, had shifted their focus. No longer was their work about warfare. Now their expertise was directed at stabilizing the newly formed systems, ensuring that no species could ever again be subjected to the horrors the hegemony had wrought. "Justice doesn't stop with conquest," Kadrin said as he oversaw the integration of former hegemony worlds. His eyes burned with the intensity of someone who had spent too long watching the shadows of war. "This is where we show them how to rebuild. This is the real work." Varric stood beside him, nodding in agreement. "These worlds must learn to coexist. Our first test will be to ensure we're all equals in this new system. We have no time for old grudges." Their efforts were slow, methodical. Peace didn't come easily after generations of bloodshed, but the key to success lay in Earth's willingness to integrate, not dominate. They introduced comprehensive reparations programs, focused on rebuilding infrastructure, and most importantly, took the time to listen to the voices that had been silenced for so long. In the council halls, Yarrick Droz stood at the front of the chamber, surveying the assembly of former hegemony officials who now sat before him, nervously shifting in their seats. His presence was imposing, not because of his military rank, but because of what he represented. The very face of Earth's unwavering resolve. Today, they would begin the final phase of rebuilding, not through more combat, but through education. "We have a choice, all of us," Jarek began, his voice thick with authority. "You can either accept this new order, or you can leave, but understand this. We are not here to punish. We are here to teach to show that the past's mistakes are not something we carry forward, but something we learn from. The former officials, the architects of destruction, listened in silence as Jarek continued. The galaxy is vast, but it can no longer afford your mistakes. If we are to succeed, we must build a system where everyone can thrive, where no species is ever again erased in the name of power. Jarek turned, signaling the start of a mass reconciliation conference, an opportunity for the Hegemony's former leaders to undergo a rigorous course in the new laws that govern the galaxy. But this wasn't a courtroom. It was a space for reflection and education. The goal wasn't just to reprogram the systems, it was to reprogram the minds that had once believed their superiority was a given. Today, you'll begin to understand what equality truly means, Jarek said quietly, his words carrying the weight of centuries of oppression. And if you're lucky, you might just come to realize why Earth is leading this new era. As Earth's new Galactic Council convened, Darian Hessek sat at the center, watching as the first true wave of change began to unfold before him. The lights in the chamber flickered softly, the hum of conversation filling the air. But underneath the surface of quiet exchanges, a wave of hope was building. It wasn't just the cessation of violence, it was the acknowledgement that the galaxy could finally heal. No longer would peace be a temporary state between wars. It would be an active, living entity, nourished by the actions of every species. Earth has learned, Hessek said, his voice resonating through the chamber, that power is not something to be wielded against others. It is something to be shared. For the first time in history, every voice here is equal, and every world has a say in the future. The room grew still as his words took root, and for the first time, the members of the Galactic Council recognized something fundamental. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a new path forward, a way for every species to rise together, in unison, building a future where no one would dominate, and no one would suffer the same fate as those that had been erased by the hegemony. Hessek stood, looking out at the assembly. We've learned from our past mistakes, and now it's time to make sure the galaxy can thrive in peace. Earth's victory had not come with destruction alone. It had come with education, with diplomacy, with a monumental effort to ensure that the darkest chapters of the galaxy's history would never be repeated. The former hegemony was gone, its history nothing but a cautionary tale, and Earth's bureaucratic precision ensured that no species would ever again be wiped out for political reasons. The galaxy was now an open book, its pages waiting to be filled with stories of cooperation, equality, and respect. Earth had not just fought for survival, it had fought for a new way of life.